Pizzuti rule. Maybe some of you know Gary Pizzuti. He said questions begin with who, what, when, where, why, how, is, or does, and they end in a question mark. Um, if if they do not follow that rule, Ken will not be passing the question along to me. So I'll be checking maybe every couple slides if there are questions that follow that rule. Thank you in advance. There will also be times where I will be asking the question and soliciting the audience. So please enter your responses or suggestions. I really appreciate our opportunity to make virtual events collaborative. And as Ken noted in the introduction, I don't really like long drawn out introductions. You can see here, I left my name kind of naked and decided not to surround it with all those letters and certifications that cost tens of thousands of dollars of certification exam fees. Because for this presentation, what I want to share, I'm most proud of in my resume, is the fact that I started out in a warehouse, unloading trucks, putting away stock, picking orders, loading trucks. I even a couple times went out on deliveries as a driver helper. And I calculated once to show you how exciting my Saturday nights are. I figured I've handled over 1 million pieces of inventory in my life. And I want to make sure you know how I keep score. If I put away a pallet with 30 cases, that's not 30. That counts as one put away. So I've handled over 1 million pieces. And my lower back does not mind if I never do that kind of work again. But if I had to keep a roof over my head, I could do it. And with regard to the topic of leadership versus management, I want to relate a couple examples from when I was working in that grocery warehouse. And the first one I'll tell you about Joe. Joe was 6'5", 250 pounds, with a personality to match. He was a great boss, but he didn't bullshit around. One time when I checked into work, he looked at me and he said, "Hey, Ford, you ever work in the freezer?" And I said, "No." He threw a freezer suit at my feet and said, "You won't be able to say that again." Now you might say, "Wow, what a jerk," or whatever. Well, this environment, there wasn't no such thing as saying we'll finish it tomorrow or next week. You stay until the orders are picked and the trucks are loaded. That was just the nature of the environment. And I can tell you, it wouldn't have been something where everybody tries to be the employee's best friend. That would not have always worked out. You got to get the orders picked, trucks loaded, drivers are waiting, and customers are waiting for their delivery. So I'll always remember that. And actually, to be honest, it turns out working in the freezer was good prep for eventually climbing the mountains in the Adirondacks. So I appreciated that. Now I'm going to tell you, same environment. One time when Frank, another supervisor, asked me if I wanted to work over in his crew with the institutional accounts. And just let me explain. About one part of our business was grocery deliveries to grocery stores. In other words, stuff for resale. You go in and buy at your ShopRite or your Kroger's or your Walmart, etc. But we also had substantial institutional business, meaning food products we sell to restaurants, cafeterias, schools, prisons. In other words, places that make the food. And Frank said, "Ford, you want to work over on my crew in institutional?" And I said, "Sure." And he said, "You've worked here a while. You're pretty familiar with things." Louise or somebody, shut your mic off, please. Whoever that is. Or Ken, if you notice stuff like that, if you
Yep,
can
just did it.
ready to cut their mic. Thank you.
Yep.
All right. And so Frank was telling me he had a lot of confidence in me. And he said, I'm going to make you the crew leader. It's not a paid position, it's not an official title. There won't be anything in your human resources file. There's going to be no change in your paycheck. But I'm going to tell the other warehouse personnel to sort of follow your lead. He said, if you ever have any questions, you're not sure about what to do, don't bother me. Figure it out for yourself. And he turned and walked away. And another warehouseman came up to me and said, what was that? And I explained what happened. And they go, oh, he's expecting you to do the boss's job. And I said, no, he just empowered me. He told me he has faith in me to figure things out. And if I make a mistake, he figures it'll be a learning experience. So I'm really appreciated Frank's approach to that. And that was the first example of I had a supervisor who had enough confidence in me to say, you figure it out on your own. And I really appreciated it. All right, as we go through the slides here, we'll be covering the following agenda. And the first couple of slides will relate similar to that anecdote that I just shared. You know, what are the traditional definitions when we think of leadership or when we think of management? And what are the roles and responsibilities that we think each one has? And then I'm going to suggest how maybe we have an evolved environment where we think we can integrate these roles. On the slide following that, I'm going to ask a question. So a heads up. Do you think it's genetic or do you think it's environment? That is the nature versus nurture question. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how management or leadership styles can vary among different business sectors or different environments. And again, that might tie into what I just talked about, you know, working nights in a warehouse where the work's just got to get done. I'll introduce some motivational techniques, some that are more common to leaders and some that are more common to managers. And I'll sum it up by suggesting this is how we create the ideal combination, the ultimate leader/manager. All right, so let's start out looking for feedback from the audience. How would you describe management? Please type in suggestions and I'll give a couple of seconds. And Ken, as we get those, if you could please share.
I'm checking right now. People are typing still.
So what is it we think of when we think of the management approach? I'm sure we must have some managers. So what do you think of in terms of your job? And I'll tell you, I also note sometimes throughout my presentations, not just this one, but teaching APICS or ASQ certification, sometimes I pick on managers and the managers in the room always laugh because they always think I'm talking about their manager. They never think I'm talking about them. Have we got anything yet, or did people think they were taking the night off? You
Rapid fire. Here we go. You ready?
Yes, sir.
All right. I'll just read them one after another. Ensure objectives met. Hierarchy to eliminate roadblocks/barriers. Runs the place. I would describe management as all of the technical, political, and similar skills needed to direct subordinates in line with institutional policies and procedures, organizing and ensuring tactical execution, getting it done, planning, organizing, and directing a team to meet the company goals. Managers are responsible for results. Productive decision maker. Motivation. You can manage things and processes. You lead people. Metrics guide the process, responsible for direction of a group, responsibility, function or role of managing tools, processes, and people, takes responsibility, management, in other words, leader, covering employees' backsides. I like that one. Employee, I had a boss that would always stick up for his people, even if they were wrong, and yet he'd pull them aside afterwards and say, "What the hell were you thinking?" Let's see, a role that considers both the company goals and objectives as well as having the employees' interests and advancements in mind. Good leaders inspire people to exceed their expectations. And the one I didn't have time to type was, I think it's definitely important to be a leader versus a manager. Today's managers are more coaches and mentors and aren't the old-fashioned intimidation, management by intimidation. That is very old-fashioned and long gone. But anyway, those are my thoughts. I just added at the very end. Sorry.
Thank you very much. And I appreciate all that feedback. And I am thinking this is why I often start classes by announcing less of me and more of the audience is a good thing. This is fantastic. This is typically the results that I see to this question, where we're talking about making sure things get done. The results have to happen. You got to hit the goals and the objectives. I also appreciated the person who had mentioned eliminating the barriers. I mean, maybe it means crashing through the barriers. So this is very good. Now, let me share what I took from Webster's. The art or the act of managing, which is kind of a circular definition because they repeated the word, but the conducting or supervising of something. And the second, judicious use of means to accomplish an end. Again, focusing on the results. It's very important there. So I appreciate everybody who entered something that was very valuable, and thank you so much. And now you can tell the next slide is going to be a similar question, but about leadership. So, and it's all right. If you think it was the same thing, that is fine. There's no wrong suggestions here. I appreciate any engagement and suggestions that you provide. So whatever you want to suggest here, and maybe it's a contrast or comparison, maybe it's a different type of thought with this one. So Ken, I thank you in advance if you can share what people are suggesting the definition of leadership is.
Start reading them now because people are still typing. Let's see. All righty. I don't know where I left off on the last one, but let's just start here. A role that considers both the company goals and objectives as having the employee's interest and advancement in mind. Good leaders inspire people to exceed their expectations, to bring out the maximum optimum result out of staff, which will boost profits and make better and better employees. Just like you, Mike, it says. Your managers brought out the best from you. Your manager is successful.
36.
Yeah. And then the North Star. And then lead by example. Leadership is inspiration. Good manager equals leader. Bad manager equals fraud. Hack. I would add in there fraud. Bad manager is one that manages by intimidation. Coaching, mentoring, and guiding people, setting an example to be followed. Leadership, inspiring others to drive to their best, listens, provides feedback. Someone people willingly follows. I used to have a manager that people wanted to get stuff done with versus a manager who felt like you had to get stuff done for them. Someone who works with their team to accomplish a task goal, taking charge, uplifting a team when needed, setting a great example. Be a good example. I would define leadership as the necessary social and communicative actions and skills necessary to inspire, empower, develop, and direct their subordinates, the ability to inspire and motivate others, one who coaches and mentors their people and empowers people to grow, inspires people to follow along. Leadership is a behavior, not a title. It is the process of setting a vision and inspiring others to march towards that vision. Watch what I do and emulate. Leadership is encouraging others to succeed, perhaps by example or by training, or by letting them swim in the deep end like Mike's bosses did in the freezer. Um, let's see. And the ability to delegate responsibility and empower employees. One who heads the pack and guides them along the way, empowers their team, sets a good example. Leadership, not necessarily a manager, but someone you want to emulate. Leaders are the focus point for ones to follow to make things work. Only a couple more. To motivate employees, buy into their goals, to motivate employees, a cheerleader for their team. There you go.
Thank you for sharing those, Ken, and thank you for everyone who had entered something into the chat. I'm very impressed with the responses that we're getting, and again, consistent with what I've gotten as a response to this question in prior deliveries of this presentation. And what I really like is several times I heard the words team or teamwork within this definition that I don't think we heard with management. So I'm starting to think, it sounds like maybe the manager is saying, hey, here's what we got to do. We're leaving New York and we got to get to Los Angeles. Well, that's what the manager says got to happen. The leader is along for the ride and he's helping us out. He's driving part of the way, or he's helping us pack up. He's helping us plan the routes along the way. He's there with us to make sure we make it to Los Angeles. And now we'll go to the official Webster's dictionary definition, which says, is the first one, the capacity to lead, again, kind of a circular definition, but the second one, to guide on a way, to direct on a course or in a direction, to direct the operations, activity, or performance of. So it sounds like they're there to support us and again to help us stay on track. For example, if we were going to Los Angeles. And again, thanks to everyone who had made a suggestion in the responses there. We really appreciate that. And I've noticed sometimes a lot of people have been telling me they think that it's harder to have engagement virtually. I've had experiences like this one where it's easier because some people might be shy about speaking up if we're in a room, but entering into chat, they might be a little more forthcoming. So again, thanks to everyone for the participation. So I'm going to do some expanded definitions here and suggest that the things we have historically or traditionally associated with management are the planning and the budgeting. So these long-term plans that are high level, broad-based, but have specific targets. And then maybe deciding, hey, these are how I set people up. Either you could say within operations, here's finance, here's human resources, here's planning, here's procurement, here's marketing and sales. By the way, friends, spread the word. It's marketing and sales. It's not sales and marketing. Which do you do first? All right, I'm trying to change the world here. I don't know if I can do it before I die. Another thing, please don't say buyer planner. It's planner buyer. I think you got to plan an item before you know how much to buy. And then also maybe it's things like how many do I need on first or second or third shift? And typically managers may have a controlling aspect and they say, I'm the one who solves the problem. I'll come up with the solution. That's my job as a manager. And they may find that they are delegating responsibilities. Like Joe saying, hey, Ford, you're in the freezer tonight. Now, when I think about what job titles are associated with this, I just want to share some of the results that I've had from prior deliveries of this. I've heard supervisor, department manager, the C-suite executives, chief information officer, chief technology officer, chief financial officer, chief executive officer. vice president or director, controller, plant manager, operations manager. And I heard some beeps. Is there a question, Ken? I'm just looking for questions at this point.
Nope, just new people joining.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
All right, now I want to contrast this again with the traditional leadership role. So I had mentioned before the example of maybe a manager says, well, this is where you want to be. I got to get to Los Angeles. And then maybe the leader is saying, well, these are the highways we're going to take. This is the direction we're going. This is the hotels we're going to stay out. And maybe the manager said, well, here's the different departments and here's the different shifts, but a leader can help align people so that they fit the right job. And I'll tell you something I've had as an idea popping around in my mind. And I don't know, maybe Ford's crazy, but I think about how historically companies have come up with a job title and say, oh, I need to find a person who fits this position. I advertise, I have a job opening, either internally through a job bid or posting, or maybe externally, at some job board site or LinkedIn. But I've started to wonder, could we or should we do the reverse? And this is just some food for thought. Instead of saying, I have this job and I'm trying to treat people like clay and get them to fit this specific job, if I know there is a good person, if I say I know Larry Spinello's a good guy, I hire him. Why can't I craft a role for him? Why can't I design a function to fit him? Why don't we create jobs to fit people to maximize their skill sets? Now, I got to tell you, every HR person and manager I've worked for would probably laugh at me at that suggestion. But wouldn't that be an easier way to make a match? Instead of trying to force fit people to fit the job, why don't we craft jobs to fit people? And I know Ken's a runner like I am. Do we say, oh, look, there's some shoes that Dick's Sporting Goods are trying to burn up the inventory, so they're putting them on sale for $40. Wow, but they're a size 7. Am I going to buy a size 7 and fit my foot to the shoe? No, I buy shoes to fit my feet. So take that one back to work and suggest that. I'd be interested if we could see if I'm not going to say a national or global movement, but I'd like to see some company just try it out, take a risk and say, look, if I know this person is good, maybe I don't have a specific job title that matches them. I'll create it. I'm going to hire them and let them go to work and help my company. We also think about how motivating and inspiring Frank was when he said, if you have any problems, figure it out yourself. I mean, he was kind of snarky the way he said it, but I understand what Frank meant. He said, Ford, I believe in you. Versus Joe, who said, oh, well, you're going to find out what it's like to be in the freezer. That was not inspiring at all when he threw that freezer suit at my feet. And maybe, help recruiting and, so we can get the best talent. When I was younger, we always thought that the companies had the power. We said, man, I hope they hire me. But this is shifted, in fact, maybe reversed over my lifetime. When I was younger, or I can talk about my father's generation or grandfather, people would go after high school or college, or maybe even drop out of high school, go work at the local mill and stay there for 40 years. They really never thought about shopping around for a better job. People didn't think in terms of career. They said it's a job, it's a paycheck. But now, and I'm glad of this, younger generations recognize they have choices. So this is why a lot of human resources have rebranded themselves as talent acquisition. And again, I'll share some of the results that I had from asking this question at prior deliveries. I've heard Boy Scout leader. I've heard president. And I said, do you mean company president or country president? They go, either one should be a leader. They've said coach, master sergeant. So I had some people who are in the military, coordinator, father. And I said, with father, I said, okay, are you talking like a priest or you're talking about in a family? And again, the answer was either one. You know, a holy person should be a good leader, just like somebody in a household should be a good leader. Fire chief, corporate trainer. Of course, I love that suggestion. Mentor, ambassador. And somebody suggested Twitter sender. So I guess if you are tweeting or Xing, as we say now, do you wish to set a good example and inspire people? And I hope we can add LinkedIn to that. Those of you who know me well know I'm very active in LinkedIn to make up for the fact that I know nothing about MySpace or whatever's out there. The fact that I said MySpace, some of the young people are like, what did he say?
What would Bill Belichick call it? Snap face?
No, the hoodie. Was the hoodie a manager or a leader? That's interesting. So in the introduction, I suggested we were going to get to this slide where I say, well, they don't need to be distinct roles. Leaders sometimes need to be managers, and managers sometimes need to be able to lead. And somebody posted something on LinkedIn earlier in the week, and they said, inhaling is to exhaling as leading is to managing. They said, try that. Try only inhaling. You won't be able to do that for very long. Try only exhaling. You won't be able to do that very long. You need to inhale and exhale. You need to sometimes be the leader, but other times you need to manage, and make sure that we can accomplish the goals, attain the objectives, and get the results. Now, how can we make this happen? Well, please don't think I'm trying to sell myself here when I talk about corporate training, because actually, I'm going to take a shot at corporate training briefly here, because I can think of all the experiences in my life where a supervisor or department manager I worked for who was a jerk. They were the prototypical boss, if you think about what's implied when we say the word boss. And my company sent them away to a leadership workshop or a leadership retreat. They come back Monday morning. Guess what? They're still a jerk. I mean, can anybody tell me, did you ever have a less than optimal manager in your life? They went away to training and they came back, they were reformed. Did it ever work? And again, this is I make a living as corporate training. So think about, I'm just being honest here. I don't know if I've personally witnessed this working. And I will tell you why. As it happens, most people who are in management, well, it's not going to be somebody who's 19 or 20 years old, right? Somebody who's in management, particularly a senior manager, they're probably going to be anywhere from late 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s. And as much as we all like to think we're agents of change, we're barrier breakers, right? We're champions of change. Well, We all sort of develop our own habits, you know. So I'm going to dare suggest it's got to happen earlier in life. Or you're not going to take somebody who's been the prototypical manager, top down, command and control at 50 years old, send her or him to training. I don't think it's going to work. Or at least, and I'm not trying to be negative, I'm trying to be honest. I haven't seen it work. And this leads into the question, the nature versus nurture question. And so I'd like to ask people, yes or no is what you will be entering into the chat. So real simple, yes or no. Do you believe in the natural born leader? Please just enter yes or no into the chat.
And Mike, while they're doing that, I'll read you a couple of the quick, not questions, but comments people have been doing along the way. Let's see.
Questions first, please, so that I can respond.
I think they're all comments.
All right. Please just select what you consider the greatest hits.
Okay, let's see. That method works. Mike Duke Ellington is known as a successful jazz musician who is bold enough to write tunes for a specific musician. A bold manager leader would have to execute this method. Let's see. Sometimes the worst managers are the best managers to work for. You learn everything you don't want to emulate. I love that. All right, here we go with the. All right, here we go. Yes, yes. No, no. Yes, no, yes. Leading and managing is more of an art than a science. Yes, 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 no, no. Yes, yes, no, no, yes, no.
It sounds like
no,
all the
yes.
yeses, it's everybody from Connecticut.
Mhm.
They're way ahead here.
Two
So-
no's, a yes, another yes. Oh, here we go. Yes, more yeses, 3 or 4, then a no. People don't leave jobs, they leave bosses. FYI, you've got to get the whole function going for yes or no. It'd be easier to count. And then somebody put yes.
All right. I get the sense that the yeses are overwhelmingly the favored response. That is also consistent with the history of delivering this presentation. And I'm sorry, but I am about to strongly disagree in the concept of a natural born leader. Repeat, I am going to strongly disagree with that. And I'm not going to debate anybody on that. Maybe if we were here in person and hanging out at a bar, we could do that. But for the purposes of this 1 hour presentation, we won't have time to do that. But let me share why it is an absolute myth that anybody comes out of the womb a natural born leader and why the concept is offensive to me. Because this type of thinking, and I will readily admit you did not intend to suggest this, but it lends credibility to people who are racist and sexist and believe things are predetermined in the DNA. It absolutely is not. And in fact, there are any number of studies that have shown how identical twins who are adopted out to different families grow up and be total polar opposites in their type of personality trait. So it is not in the DNA. I have asked a similar question when I teach technical writing workshops, and I ask if people believe that there are natural born writers. And again, they mistakenly believe that there is. No, and please visit your local hospital, go to the maternity ward, go look at those cute little babies and tell me how well they can lead or write. And I'm also proof of this. Anytime I go to my high school reunion, my classmates are absolutely fascinated that shy, geeky Mike Ford speaks in public. They cannot believe that. So I'm proof that there's no natural born anything. And again, you give credibility to racist and sexist people who say DNA determines stuff. It doesn't happen. Now, I will give you this. You may recall on the prior slides, I talked about how hard it is to change somebody later in life. So, what I'm going to suggest is that you need to target the formative years. And I think what happens, at least noticing when I grew up, through junior high school and high school, you would notice there's a kid who sort of took over as the leader of the gang. When I say gang, I'm not talking MS-13 or the Bloods or the Crips. I do not mean it within that context. But that's where you started to see a girl or a boy just sort of be the one who takes charge and say, hey, what are we going to do today? Play baseball. Oh, no, let's go for a hike in the woods. And those were the ones who became the point guard on the basketball team or the captain on the football team or the volleyball team, or those were the ones who ended up running for student president. So I think we can, in fact, train people to be leaders, but we got to do it at an early age. And if you've noticed, this has become very popular in corporate America, the idea of providing internships and having people move around from one division to the next. So starting at an early age, putting them on track to climb the corporate hierarchy. And I believe we can look at the personality strength and the people skills. Please do not call these soft skills. My good friend, St. Clair Gerard from New York City, ASCM, he says he doesn't like calling them soft skills. They are power skills, leadership, communication, empathy, emotional intelligence. These are the type of things that we like to have. People who play well together. You can hire somebody who demonstrates that they will be a good team player before you hire somebody who's APIC certified. Because you can send somebody to APIC certification and get that. So look for people who have the strengths or the potential to develop those strengths and provide the training, the opportunities, the reward. And as several people suggested when they mentioned the characteristics of leadership, lead by example. Now, we might see some difference in manufacturing approaches. I can think of my history. I am sad to admit that I have worked for bottom feeders. Do you know what a bottom feeder? Does anybody know what a bottom feeder is? I'll give a second. If I say I worked for a company that was a bottom feeder, and please don't say, well, they hired Ford. That's proof. Has anybody entered anything? What do you think I mean when I say I worked for a company that was a bottom feeder?
By the way, while I'm filling that out, there was one question on, I changed my mind, leaders are cultivated. Do you agree, Mike? So I think you're sort of answering that right now, so that's good.
Yep.
And charisma, that many natural leaders is a trait that can be inherited. Training certainly helps people develop these traits. Okay, so the first bottom feeder answer is lobster. That's cute.
Maine is representing.
Low quality products, sweatshop, lowest levels of aptitude, like catfish eating all things at ocean floor, including dirty stuff.
There you go.
Carp.
Yeah.
Low value, no concern for people, planet, or profit. A bottom feeder, that would be a company that gets low quality people who aren't developed and have interest in developing themselves and refuse to develop them. And then ground level. Those are the answers.
And telling me, I was a purchasing agent and they said you will buy from the cheapest supplier. And I really want you to think of that word cheap. And somebody did mention low quality. Yep, stuff was rejected left and right. I mean, this they thought it was a focus on profit, but you know what? You're not going to make a profit when you have poor quality parts. So I understand, but a business has to be a business, so I understand how sometimes there's going to be people in management who are consumed with bottom line results. My suggestion would be don't focus on cutting costs. You can only cut costs so much. I'm going to suggest add value. That's the way to make a profit. Working for somebody who thinks cutting costs, it means they miss opportunities. It's what we call you step over quarters to pick up pennies. All right. In the nonprofit environment, I've done a lot of training for State University of New York campuses and State University, the Pennsylvania State University, and of course, Apex chapters or ASQ chapters that are nonprofit. And I have a friend who works in a hospital for the past quarter century, so I understand. What's interesting is the feedback I get from people who work in hospitals. I bet as consumers, we wish healthcare was dominated more by leadership. I am telling you that is not the experience of my friends who work in healthcare. Sad to say, it seems it's more top-down command and control. I'm just going to speculate. I don't want to debate it, but I'm just going to speculate. It may be due to the fact that it is a very heavily regulated environment, and managers are basically compliance officers. So that might be the challenge. Athletics, we mentioned the example of the hoodie. I like to think of the example in the NBA. If there's any longtime NBA fans here, if you knew Coach Jerry Sloan of the Utah Jazz, he was definitely the manager type. I remember one of his ex-players said, he's the greatest coach I ever had, but the worst person. He was a horrible human being because he was just the type that would bark at you and yell at you. Contrast that with Phil Jackson. They said the Zen master. Well, what does that guy got? 11 rings, I think. 6 with the Bulls and 5 with the Lakers. So I know back when I was on teams, either in college or high school sports, a lot of times it was the type of coach who barked at you, the clipboard, the cigar hanging out of their mouth, the whistle. But I'm wondering if, and I'm not saying you got to be buddies with somebody who's making 30, 40 million a year now, but it's hard to boss around somebody who makes 10 times your salary. It's kind of tough. For military and law enforcement, I can appreciate how the management style is needed. You're not going to empower or vote on your employees. If you're in a battlefield situation, you're not going to say, well, Private, you're empowered. Do you want to fight today or you can wait till tomorrow? Now, I once had an attendee at this presentation say, Ford, you just proved why war is a bad idea. And I thought about it and I said, that's an interesting perspective. I'm not going to say right now if I agree, but they were basically suggesting if leadership doesn't apply, maybe it says something about that environment. And I said, you know what? That is food for thought. And the other one there within our family and religion or any social environment, you can think about our ASCM chapters. And I can tell you, I've had both positive and negative experiences. I've been a volunteer at the chapter level or district, or some of us actually remember regions. I've volunteered at the international level with Chicago, or going back to when headquarters were in Alexandria, Virginia. And it's a different thing when you're trying to motivate somebody. I mean, I remember the question, how do you fire a volunteer? Sidebar, I have fired volunteers. You can do it. But you know, you're not giving somebody a paycheck. You got to respect they're donating their time. And maybe it's a different approach than when you're depending on raises and promotions to motivate people. On the other hand, there is a very legitimate concern that if you're just trying to use raises, promotions, and bonuses to motivate somebody, the challenge is you're telling them their job is just a paycheck. Now, that might work if somebody is only money, 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 but numerous human resources studies going back over half a century have shown that American workers, I can't say if there's been studies internationally, but I can at least tell you, American workers for over half a century have said, I got to have more than a paycheck. All right, it's got to be more than that. And in spite of what we might think about some of our coworkers, people want to do a good job. They want to feel they're part of something more than just punching a clock. All right, they really do. The overwhelming majority of us feel like we want to make a difference. I don't care if you're the third shift maintenance crew. People want to feel like what they do matters, which is why we can think of the motivational techniques of leadership, the great value to recognizing somebody. You know, I think about all the different jobs I've had where I showed up early, stayed late, worked weekends. And the times that I asked a boss, I said, gee, you know, I've been working weekends a couple weeks in a row. How about this Friday? You let me knock off at noon. And they said, oh, well, you got paid overtime. And, you know, it just made me feel like crap, you know, to say something like that. And how many times I volunteered to take on extra projects to help out. And friends, I can tell you how much it would have mattered just to have my supervisor come up and say, hey, Ford, you know, you helped us work on that project. I really appreciate it. A pat on the back, shake my hand, just recognition. And this is why I trust a lot of companies, I hope, have moved away from the annual performance review. Lord almighty, folks, I hope you don't wait a year before you tell somebody, either case, before you let them know they're doing a good job or let them know they're doing a bad job. So I'm going to suggest at least monthly reviews and maybe more often. And I'm not saying it needs to be a 1 hour sit down. Maybe it's seeing somebody in the break room or passing them in the hallway and just taking a couple of minutes of their time to give them feedback. So much more frequent feedback and informal as well as formal. And the cookies, yes, it can be cookies, it can be candy. And I'll tell you how I use this in training classes. I am not a big fan of this idea that you do the end of course evaluation. What the hell good is that? The course is over. I have no opportunity for correction. So whenever I'm doing a multi-session course, or even if it's a full day seminar, by the first break or before lunch, I've got some form of informal feedback. You know, something simple, maybe handing out a bunch of 3x5 index cards and say, give me one sentence of feedback. All right. Collect feedback early and often. And friends, the difference that will make among your staff, the idea that you at least asked for the feedback, they're going to appreciate it. But please, beyond that, act on the feedback. So
Mike,
here
did
is
you
our,
want to look at any of the questions?
if you could, let's say if you could pick maybe one or two.
Okay.
Make the
Let's see.
best of.
This one person wrote, "What about praise as a motivator? Has worked for me, either giving away or receiving said praise." Some people do appreciate praise even more than a raise, I guess. I don't know, but what do you think?
They do. They do. And I hope nobody walks away from this saying, gee, I can save money. I can go up and shake their hand instead of give them a raise. Okay, that's not what I'm suggesting here. Again, it's a competitive environment. People can choose to go work somewhere else.
One that says, let's see, that study I heard about managers thought that salary was in the top three things employee wanted. And in actuality, sure, it was in the top 10, but it definitely wasn't in the top five. And
It
motivation depends on the individual needs as described by Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Sorry, go ahead.
and let me say this, salary might get people interested in a job. It might even get them to take a job. But if it's an uncomfortable environment, it's not going to get them to stay at the job. And I know people who have spent their life for salary raises and bonuses, and then they have health issues later in life, ulcers, heart attacks. And you say, was it worth it? Was the money worth the stress? So folks, I understand you got to keep a roof over your head, clothes on your back, food in your belly. But if you think money equals success, how much is enough? You're never going to be happy. And I'm not a hypocrite to then also admit, yes, after this presentation, I got to go get my Mega Millions and Powerball tickets. All right. So let us formulate a plan. And I just wish to note two things. There will be a copy of the presentation. The recording will be posted, and a PDF file of the slides will be posted. And I will hang out after the official end of the presentation. So if there, I will make sure I get to all questions. All right. So if you can appreciate, I have time limits. There's the manager in me. I'm delivering a 1 hour presentation, but the leader in me says I'll hang out after. Right. So I'm going to suggest that we have to identify the needed skill sets. All right. What do I need to create the ultimate leader manager who's going to be able to do both? Lead when it's time to lead and manage when it's time to manage. And then prioritize these. You know, we're familiar with the Pareto analysis. Not all skill sets are equal. And understand, a good supervisor is somebody who can be flexible on the fly. They can react to the needs of their employee and their customers simultaneously. This is what we call situational awareness. All right. Flexibility, my friends. Now look for those qualified candidates. And when I say this, I'm not saying this at the exclusion of all others. Because remember, I don't believe people come out of the womb that way. But I do believe, again, this is based on my lifetime of experience. Please don't suggest I'm a statistical anomaly. It's going to get tough as people get into their 40s or 50s. Not because I am saying as humans age, they can't change. It just means by that point in time, they've had 20 or 25 years of a certain style drilled into them. And maybe it's the wrong style. So think about what I said with sending somebody who's being a boss to a retreat over a weekend. It's not going to be able to work just over a weekend. And the SWOT analysis, we play to people's strengths. We try to work on their weaknesses and support, encourage them, put them on the track to climbing the corporate ladder. And if somebody slips down a couple steps on the ladder, you don't cut them off. You don't toss them aside. You help them get back up the ladder and go again. All right. You don't say, oh, you missed, that's it. Like Frank was willing to do, let me learn from my mistakes. So a recap of what we've covered. The first several slides, I talked about a comparison, a contrast of the traditional or stereotype definitions or roles and responsibilities of leadership versus management. I suggested that we have to move away from the traditional concepts and think that people can be part manager, part leader. I hope I've persuaded you. It's not genetic. It's not in the DNA, but somewhere along those formative years, we can develop leadership and management skills. And it's going to change or vary by business sectors, all right? Whether it's nonprofit versus profit, government, academic, or within our personal lives as volunteers or in our own households. I suggested some of the motivational techniques that managers might use that are geared towards career and making money versus the leadership ones that are found at times can actually be superior. And then I outlined a multi-step process to create the ideal leader manager by identifying the skill sets that are needed, prioritize them, look for qualified candidates, and then support them on their path towards climbing through the management ladder. Before I go to questions and comments, I'd like to show a video clip that I use in some of my classes when I am talking about sales and operations planning. But this short video, it's about 1 minute, 15 seconds, definitely applies to leadership. Unless told otherwise, I will assume that the video and audio will be working.
Interested in excuses. We're about to lose one of our best customers, and I want to know how the hell that could happen. Berger, you guys closed this deal. How did you figure we could deliver 26,000 units this quarter?
Hollander said we could increase capacity if we needed to.
Whoa, hold on a minute. What I said is we could gear up to increase capacity. But that takes time. I can't do it overnight. Right now, our capacity is based on current projections.
What projections?
Well, you know, same estimate I've used for the past 12 months. Last quarter, plus 2%.
Where does that get us to?
17,000 units. We might be able to max that up to 19,000, tops.
But of course, that's just a theoretical number.
Theoretical?
Yeah, I mean, realistically, I've only got enough components ordered for 14,000 units, which is based on the projection I was given.
Who gave you those projections, huh? I want to know who gave you those projections.
You did, sir.
So this clip reminds me of my life as a cog in the corporate wheel. You see how manager first tries to blame sales, Berger, and then Berger tries to blame Hollander. She's the production manager. And then they always say, oh, well, the constraints over here in purchasing. And it turns out, oh, the projections came from the boss. So my advice for all the managers in the Zoom room, whenever something's going wrong and you feel like starting to toss dirty looks around, good advice is maybe start in the mirror, you know, because you've got to be willing to say the buck starts here. If there's something wrong with somebody on your staff, well, that's got to come back to you. How did that happen? So I appreciate everyone staying with us here. And now let me go to whatever questions we have hanging. I think we have 10 more minutes for questions that could be in the chat, please.
All right, let's look at those. By the way, this link for the CEU certificate and the survey is in the chat window. So grab it while you can. Certification certificate. And also up towards the top is the link towards where you can get the recording. It won't be posted till the end of the week, probably. It's all done by, nobody's paid here. We're all volunteers, right, Mike?
I'm not getting paid. Yeah, when we do it
Yeah.
first, I can't even get a beer. Holy moly.
I owe you one.
Well, let me
You come-
also remind everyone, please, this evening, update your CV or however you record your certification maintenance points. Because if you don't do it tonight, your certification is going to be due, and you're going to be like,
What
what's
did I
all those
do?
events I attended the past 3 years? I'm telling you, I've already updated that I gave this presentation. Well, I assumed I was going to. I did that at 2:00 this afternoon. I keep a spreadsheet of everything I attend and everything I deliver. Trust me, if you don't record it tonight, you're going to forget about it. So please make sure you get credit for this.
Yep. So somebody did ask for the link for the YouTube thing. If you can pop it in chat, Mike, that'd be great. So that'd be one thing. And then I'll read you some comments while you're getting that. When I think of good leadership style, I think of the principle adopted by the U.S. Army known in English as mission type orders, where broad mission guidelines are issued and fulfillment of these orders is left to the subordinate. Robert Citino shows this quite well in his The German Way of War. My question is, how much authority should be devolved to a subordinate? So that's one for you, Mike.
Well, as I trust I covered, it depends on the situation. I mean, it's a balancing act at times. I have witnessed in, like the warehouse I was talking about, it was just a brutal physical environment. And there were a lot of times having a manager like Joe with his style was actually superior, because if you left it to people and say, oh, you don't have to work overtime, you can leave when you want, or you decide what orders you're going to pick. I mean, empowerment might not have worked too well in that environment. It might have been kind of tough. I mean, this was such a brutal environment. I once was training a new guy. He quit at lunch. All right. After 4 hours, he quit. I can also share this. I had some friends who've worked in the military, and they ended up working at that warehouse. They had no problems taking orders and being bossed around, because that's what they were used to, including one of my best friends who was in the Marine Corps. He didn't like bosses who were touchy-feely. His perception is they were soft. And I'll add one more comment on that. I actually liked Joe. I mean, that was just an interesting anecdote about throwing the freezer suit at my feet. But I'll tell you why I always liked Joe as one of my favorite bosses. He was tough. He was a hard ass, but he was fair. He was a hard ass to everybody. There have been times where I've had the touchy-feely leadership type who I can tell is the type who wakes up every day and says, what can I do to get people to like me? And that sacrifices or conflicts with the company goal of get her done. So that's why I say you've got to be flexible. It depends on your environment, your business, and the situation.
Okay, a couple more comments. Let's see. Although I appreciated Mike's perspective of sharing of information about leadership, I also believe that both nurture and nature play a role in developing a leader. It's the standard chicken or the egg dilemma. So appreciate both. That's cool.
So we have a sexist person, but I'll agree. Listen, if you put a gun to my head, okay, men are better managers. See, I know I saw Joyce type that, so that was a shot across the bow.
I love it. Let's see. There are two good books on leadership, Zappi and Heraz. Zappi is the first in the series. And let's see, somebody else writes, it's not a one size fits all. link to the recording. So there will be a link to the recording. I posted in the chat further up at the beginning. I will post it again, I promise. So don't leave, and I'll post that where the recording's going to go. It's not going to be up till the end of the week, like I said, because it's done by volunteers. So we just got to fit it in our, between our real work.
This isn't real. Holy
Yeah.
smokes! I am an AI generated avatar. Michael Ford is out fishing.
Exactly. No, this is probably more real than the real work. So let's see. This is great information. I totally agree with Michael about the leadership. I have used it and good success. When you motivate and praise others, they will go out of their way to do anything for you. That's from Naren. Let's see. And then Larry says, allowance for us to complain in a professional way of what is going wrong and what needs to be done. So many bosses embarrass those who question them or company policies. And you can't just have yes men around you all the time. You'll never get anywhere. Feedback should occur throughout training, not just at a summative feedback at the end, eval. We use the course of feedback and let's see, spot check availability, ABC, and then evaluations at the end of the season too, end of the year. Learners need a voice all throughout training, including the final say. So what we do at Excelis is we have our annual review here, but there's supposed to be follow-up every few months. And usually the boss will do a one-on-one with us, at least monthly, and go over anything and everything related to goals and as well as current projects. So it's pretty cool. If the annual evaluation is a surprise, the manager's not doing their job. 100% agreed, money is not worth the stress. And so a lot of positive comments for you there, Mike. Classic struggle on going back to the office versus desire of employees for remote hybrid work situations. And I guess that depends on your job. Where we work, if you're a planner and you're working on the factory floor, you literally have to come in every day. If you're building stuff, you have to come in every day. If you're doing virtual work, legal and all that stuff, you don't have to go in every day. And then some of the people have a mix where they're, touch parts occasionally, but they work from home the other 3 or 4 days a week. So it is definitely a struggle. We had some old-fashioned managers who would insist, you have to go back 5 days a week, but they were more managers by activity and not by results. If you can manage by results, we once had a boss that, someone would say, I got to go to the doctor at, 2:00 today. And he'd say, don't care. As long as you're getting your job done, you don't even have to waste, tell me that stuff. Just keep getting your job done and, handle your schedule your way. So it's pretty cool. Managing by results versus activity seems to be more of a modern way of doing things. But anyway, I digress.
All right, there are a couple of questions or comments that I saw pick up. I see we have officially 1 minute and 25 seconds. Yes, I'm anal retentive left brainer, but you're all welcome to hang out after 7:30. But I would like to ask if everyone could turn on their camera, because as I said, I am big on LinkedIn, so I'd love to capture your beautiful smiling faces. So if everyone could now turn on their cameras. Happy day. Give you another couple seconds. Let's see, everyone. You want to get in there? You want to get in there?
2 people dropped off instead of turning their camera.
Yeah, I know. They did the opposite. What's going on there? All right, here comes the picture. Big smile.
Some people can't do their cameras.
Thank you, folks.
For work computers.
So a couple of, so we definitely understand, because this is your personal time. And I remember somebody in human resources sharing with me, they said, Ford, the cost of the training cost, it ain't the books, it ain't the exams, it ain't paying for Ford's fee. It's people spending the hours of their time. That's the absolute most valuable one. Most companies don't measure it that way, but that's the actual cost, the opportunity cost. So I understand if some people got a bolt, but let me address a couple of the comments and questions I saw. One about, does a leader stay with a sinking ship or do they jump off? Leaders prevent sinking ships. Boy, that was an easy one. I owe somebody a beer. When you give me one right across the plate like that, it's so easy to knock it over the green monster. Another one person said, how do I get somebody to switch? If you have a cost-focused organization, how do I get them away from that towards value add? Well, I think introducing them to lean methodology would be important. Or you could give a simple analogy. Let us say within your own household, you and your partner are struggling to get ahead to pay the bills. What is going to be the solution long term? Is it going to be, we got to cut. Instead of buying brand name, we'll buy generic. Oh, we need to tighten our belt. Friends, there is a fixed amount that you can save. Let me say your household combined income among two working partners, let's just say it's about $125,000 a year. Well, how much of that is discretionary spending? You know, maybe 50 or 60 of that is the house, the cars, groceries, etc. So at best, you can scrimp and pinch pennies and maybe save how much? But if you said instead, what are my earning opportunities to make more money? What's the limit? Infinity. If you have the right attitude, right? So approach your managers. And plus, a lot of times I've seen this cost focus approach. It's where companies are struggling or dying. And they say, we got to cut costs. Are there examples of that leading to success? Or is it companies are successful because they add value? It's like I do a presentation called Zero Layoffs. Zero layoff policies work. And I have people who tell me, no, we had to lay off employees. Friends, the number one result of having a layoff is having a second round of layoffs. The number one result of a second round of layoffs is a third round of layoffs. I have never personally witnessed a company lay off their way to success. You will be successful because you add value. And if you can't convince your management team of that, as I said, you have choices. You can find the environment that suits or has the suitable philosophy in place. Please make choices. And why do bad leaders survive? Status quo, the resistance, the fear of change. People get brought up in that environment and they believe that it is a truism. The overwhelming majority of us, and I'm talking the persons in this Zoom room right now, I guarantee if I were to ask you, you would honestly reply that if you were alive 1,000 years ago, brought up in a place where everybody believed the world is flat, your family believes the world is flat, your neighbors believe the world is flat, the teachers teach you the world is flat, the powers that be, the kings, the queens, the priests, or whoever. If you grew up in that environment, you would tell me, no way would I believe the world is flat. I'm sorry, friends. I'm sorry. Most of us probably would. We don't like to admit it, but most of us would. It's just, we are products of our environment. So that's why I urge us to be choosy with environments. Be very choosy with your environment. Give it a shot. Try to change the environment you're in. And I've tried that. And got shot down. I said, see ya.
Hey, Mike, Larry here.
Hey, Larry.
That was a real good, Larry Spinell. That was a good analogy about when everybody thought it was flat. Remember what they did to Galileo and all the great philosophers of all time. They put Jesus on the cross. What I'm getting at is when anybody bucks the system, you end up on the bottom of the heap, or something's going to happen to throw you in jail. I'm seeing things now where if you try to complain, it's whether in the workplace or anywhere, Somebody's always got some answer, and I want to know. I always say, trace your sources to true facts, hard, cold facts. Don't give me crap. Don't make, we're being BS to death nonstop, full court press every day. I'm glad I'm sick. I don't know how you are. I'm 66. I think I got 20 more years. I'll be dead, and I'll say, thank God. That's why
I am 35 years old.
Yeah, 35.
I'm using
All
the
right.
metric system.
Yes, sir.
I should stop the recording on that. No, I'm just kidding. Well, I
using
will stop the
dog
recording
ears.
so you guys can talk freely now. All right.
Listen, I don't mind the gray beard showing off how old I am, because if any young whippersnapper makes a comment, come up to me, the Adirondacks, and keep up with me. When I climb Whiteface, keep up with me.
There
It's
you go.
true.
And
should
I
see
will
the
say
post and the
this
pictures.
also, and this relates to the point that Larry's making. Most of us are afraid to speak up because it is disruptive. And I don't just mean to those around us in the superiors or the powers that be. If you believe the world was flat for the first 10, 15, or even 20 years of your life, it would be a threat in your own mind to think, I've been living a lie. A lot of us just can't handle that emotionally or psychologically. It's hard to believe that what we were taught was wrong. It's very difficult to do that. And again, we don't teach it. What's interesting is a lot of managers are tugging us back and forth. They're saying, hey, Ford, be creative. Think outside the box. And the second I do it, Ford, you didn't follow the ISO 9001 procedure. What the hell are you doing here? What are you doing to me, man? You told me to be creative, and then you tell me follow procedure. So listen, I hope that I gave you a good hour and 15 minutes worth of good material. But I guarantee you, it was much easier for me to do this presentation than it will be for you to implement this at work. I hope I did not suggest it's going to be easy.
Oh, I know I'm not going to be able to do it.
But friends, remember I said that success is not how high your paycheck is. Success is fighting the good fight. All right? Fight the good fight. And you don't necessarily have to make it a battle. Be persuasive. Make the argument. Win over people, one person at a time. Win over one person at a time. That's why, people say what great personality Ford has. We're not recording anymore.
No, we are. Wait a minute.